Now I am pleased to introduce founder, chairman, CEO, Monumental Sports and Entertainment, co-founder, Revolution Growth Fund 2, former president of AOL, chairman of Groupon, Ted Leonsis. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Partha. Great, thank you. Listen, I want to welcome you to the stage. And I have this for you, but by the way, I got to tell you, they don't trust me because I realized that this cup is not filled all the way. I told them, no problem.
He's my barista at the local Starbucks in Potomac, Maryland. Does it for charity, but he's the man who serves us.
It's actually how we first met one day on a Saturday in a long line, and you must have thought I was nuts because I said sooner or later this fall we're going to be sitting on the stage having a conversation about technology.
I thought you were kidding.
Well, here we are. So we've got a lot of subjects, and you have a lot of history, a lot of experience and things that we can share. But I actually want to start with AOL because a lot of people know you from the early days of AOL. So somebody asked me a question when they knew that we were going to do this talk. And here's what they want to know. In your house, do you have platinum discs up like people in the record industry have for all those discs you used to get in the supermarket and every place else?
No, but that actually was a time when we had to get people online, and the name of the company was America Online. And at our peak, we had 36 million people subscribing, and over 100 million people in households. So about a third of America all woke up every morning to "You've got mail."
But that whole business has changed over the years, and there's a lot of new things that come. So is there something that is that connectivity point today that you see that has taken that position?
Well, I think the whole drive around millennials and this switch over from boomers and television to digital platform and urbanization. And so much has happened within the last 20 years. Fundamentally, 2008 was the first time where more people live in cities than live outside of cities. And so we've finally flipped as a world population to coagulate around big cities. And these major metro areas, of which Washington, D.C. is considered a coming super city. There's 10 super cities around the world. 4 will be in the United States, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. And super cities, they have all the IP. It's where the millennials, they go to schools and universities and cities and then stay in the cities. It's Washington, D.C. has the most millennials per capita of any city in the country right now. They have about 150 mile long. If you look at London, that's what's happened in London, that this concept of what the city is has just been expanded.
So you can predict the future that way by taking a look at the mileage and who's within that sphere.
Yeah, very much so. And so like Washington, D.C., our city is going to be from Middleburg to well past Aberdeen and Baltimore. And perhaps Baltimore will look like Tyson's Corner is to Washington, D.C., kind of a edge city concept. And so because we have, and by 2020, about a third of all of our purchases will be made by millennials. And millennials are so different and dramatically will affect everyone in the room. We're basically backstage talking about restaurants. And this is the first generation that cares more about what goes in their body than what goes on their body. And just that as a psychographic is really driving the total reinvention of food. And over the last couple of years, we've really seen that drive and the change of food. And it's sad because a lot of the AOLs, if you will, of the day, the McDonald's of the world, they're positioned in the middle.
Right.
And the middle doesn't work for millennials, right? And so you talk to young people and they want transparency. They want to know who grew their food. They want to know what are the ingredients. They want to know what are the calories. They want convenience. They want to be able to order and have it delivered. They want to be able to order and pick it up. And so these drivers all being driven by social media and this change on who the consumer is, I think creates a time of great challenge, but it also is the greatest time ever to launch a business and use technology to disrupt these industries.
So I got to ask you, we talk about the millennials and we talk about what they want in food and what they want in service, but in reality, it's a personal passion for you as well, in that it's not just a great business idea.
Well, I think I care about small business and entrepreneurial ventures, and I fall in love with entrepreneurs. One of my favorite investment is a company called Revolution Foods. Basically, it was a group of mothers who were very, very concerned about the food that was being served to their children, and they tried to get in schools for school lunches, and they tried to factor in was the food and the habits and the muscle memory being created in school children a driver of childhood obesity? Were kids being able to sleep enough? Were they able to score high enough? And what was the interrelation between nutrition and the like? So they banded together and they started a company called Revolution Foods. And it's one of our fastest growing companies in our portfolio.
How did you find that? Or how did that actually come together?
Well, we're out canvassing and looking at what are big trends and what kinds of entrepreneurial companies. And I really look at founders and the integrity in the founder and the fidelity of their idea and how committed they are to it. But Revolution Foods now is expanded not only to create commissaries and kitchens and delivery to school systems, but now they're in the consumer product goods business and might as well make sure that your children are eating healthy for breakfast and for snacks. And it's, in some cases you'd say, well, this company's a next generation Sodexo, right? Or an Aramark. But really it's getting in early, and we know through technology adoption, the social acceptance of technology. It's why colleges are so important. It's why young people adopting a technology like a Snapchat becomes so important. And so this is, if you can get young people accepting good food, freshly baked food, mothers knowing how many calories and what's being consumed, that will trickle through, because as those kids graduate and go into the workforce and they become buyers at grocery stores and the like, they'll have those habits. And that change is really driving a lot of what's going on in our business.
Does it are you able to marry technology into that kind of investment? I mean, they didn't come to you as a technology investment, but clearly technology is an enabler.
Yeah, technology is enabling all of this. And there's this concept of Internet 3.0, with the first wave of the web, AOL and the like, was getting people online and providing the plumbing, if you will. And then the second was these applications and technology and infrastructure and Web 2.0, where the internet became particleized, if you will, and it's really had a dramatic effect on media. And now I'd say it's more, how do you use the platform to make things faster, better, cheaper, more convenient in your everyday business? And we're seeing this confluence of consumer behavior changing dramatically. Who would have thought, and I'll give you a great example. One of my companies, there were a young man and woman, and they fell in love, and they moved in together, and they were renting an apartment here in Arlington, and the landlord had this deal where if you signed a 2-year lease and you lived there for 2 years and you liked it, you could buy it, and that second year of rent would go towards your down payment, and essentially be your down payment. So they decided to do that, and they rented for 2 years, and the second year they decided they would go ahead and buy it. And they had this party, and they brought a bunch of friends over, and they were painting rooms, and they put new carpeting down and the like, and they took a bunch of pictures of what they were doing, and they put it on Instagram, and they got dozens and dozens of friends and family members encouraging them and saying, "This looks great," and "Congratulations." And maybe a month later, they went for a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica, and they chased monkeys, and they went gliding and surfing, and they published on Instagram, and they got thousands and thousands of people giving them the thumbs up, and "we like it," and "how cool is that?" And they came back and they canceled their contract to buy the house. And it was, we got no positive reinforcement about ownership. We got positive reinforcement about experience. And that is so dramatic. All I could think of was if I had taken a girlfriend for 2 weeks to Costa Rica, my mother would say, "Are you out of your mind? You could have bought a car with that." Well, now kids don't want to own cars. They don't want to own apartments. They don't want to own. And this theory, if you will, of on demand and being able to share is also being powered by technology and will change literally the way we operate in our industry.
Well, you bring up the concept of experience, and a lot of people have talked about technology in our industry as, does it enhance the experience, does it take it away? So I'd just like to shift, because of all the things, you're very involved in the sports world, with the Verizon Center here, and that's all about experience. So how do you connect? Are you leading the way on fan experience, team experience? How do you tie all that together and create the experience?
Well, again, this concept of urbanization in metro areas, if you look at major cities, there are very, very few iconic institutions that define that community. First is iconic real estate. Real estate still today matters. I was in New York yesterday in the Empire State Building, and here we have the monuments, and iconic real estate matters. Sadly, 9/11 wasn't just the loss of life. It was they took down the World Trade Centers. They attacked the world's biggest office building here in D.C. And so iconic real estate really matters. Secondly is public space. Manhattan has Central Park. We've got them all, and all great cities, all great urban areas will have lots of public space. Third is a defining business community. You close your eyes, you think of LA, you think of Hollywood. Close your eyes, think of San Francisco, you think of Silicon Valley. For a long, long time, we've been about federal contracting and K Street, if you will, and lobbyists. And fourth, and perhaps most importantly, is academic institutions. Cities that have great universities. Universities represent longevity. It's where all the IP come, the alumni associations. They're large employers. GW and Georgetown are some of the biggest employers in Washington, D.C. And fifth, the sports teams. Sports teams bring together communities. We're conveners. We're our own public space, and that Verizon Center will bring in 2.5 million people during the year. And our business is changing dramatically too, and the definition, the way we look at our business is changing. It used to be we were sports teams and real estate business. And then it was, well, really we're like an e-commerce portal. Verizon Center, when I went to college, you were told whatever you do, enjoy Georgetown, enjoy the campus, but do not go past 10th Street.
That's right.
And the Verizon Center neighborhood was adult bookstores and prostitution and drug dealing, and now it's the Shakespeare Theater, and there's more restaurants, and it's become where our community goes really to dine and to be entertained. I've seen some heat maps from Uber with the #1 dropped off and picked up site within 100 miles for Uber. Right? So it's become a central hub of activity. and we drive these people in. We were the DC Chamber of Commerce Company of the Year. And it's not just because we have good teams, it's because we drive lots of people into the community. And when we win, people feel good, and then they go to the bars and the restaurants, and they contract with Uber. Uber also showed us the difference of when we win and qualify for the playoffs and when we don't. So we hold the psyche of the community.
What is the lift on that?
It's more than 15%.
15%?
15% winning and losing. The other thing that's really interesting about sports is now this redefinition of what business model are we in. And we all know that the LA Clippers were just acquired by Steve Ballmer, and he paid $2 billion for the basketball team. And that valued the team at more than 10 times revenues. And those kinds of business models in the tech business, they're called SaaS, software as service. And one of the key drivers around that business model is renewals of reoccurring revenues, companies that have long-term contracts. And so all of a sudden, we look at our business through a different lens, and you say, well, we got long-term contracts. We got naming rights deals that are 20 years. We have suite lease deals that are 5 years. We have media deals that are 20 years and 10 years long. We have season ticket holders. We're over 95% renewal year over year. And so we just start to look at our business no longer as we sell tickets and we own a building, and we're really central to the psyche and the commerce of the city, and we're in the higher quadrant of value creation of a business because of all the reoccurring revenues that we have. And frankly, all of the communal conversation that we activate. And so all you have to do is go to Twitter and see what's trending on Twitter in your city. And for the most part, it's usually around sports and entertainment. And so the social responsibility we have in owning teams is very important. And we have to be innovators. And so some of the things that I'm seeing is that media is changing dramatically. And you'll hear and read lots about the video bundle from cable companies. And will young people act like we do around the importance of cable? And you'll hear this misnomer about cord cutters, people who subscribe to cable and then they cut the cord, and because they no longer want to pay $100 for their 900 channels. And it totally misses the point on what's happening. And it's all being bubbled up on college campuses. I have a son who's 26 years old. He went to University of Pennsylvania. We checked him into his dorm, and there was a hardwire cable. And we ran out to Best Buy. We bought him a big TV. And he had his Xbox, and then he had Slingbox, and he was a popular guy in the dorm. People would come and watch games and play video games in his dorm. And 4 years later, my daughter went to Georgetown University, and they were wireless campus. They had no cable. And I said, I'll go out and buy you a TV like we did your brother. And she says, I don't need one, I use my iPad. And so in 4 years, it went from physical connectivity and a TV, a big piece of glass, to no physical connectivity and this mobile device. So my daughter graduates, and she's now in film school, and she's living in London, a super city. And we move her in. She's renting. She has no interest in owning. And it's, do you want cable? No, I don't need cable. I have Netflix. I have Slingbox, so when I want to watch something, I hook onto your cable. But the cable company...
But you have cable.
The cable company in London doesn't even know she exists. Now, think of that. Students are coming into urban areas, and when they graduate, they're replicating their dorm experience. They're not getting cable, they're not buying televisions. And so we're in a sold out situation here. And so what I worry about is, here's a young man who grew up in Minnesota. He loves hockey, loves basketball. He graduates from George Mason University. He gets a job. He's living with 3 other guys in DC. He doesn't have cable. He doesn't have TV. We're sold out. He can't buy a ticket. There's the secondary market. He can buy tickets and pay a whole bunch of money. He's living on Groupon, right? He's basically managing his budget, and he's eating out all of the time, and he's going to Sweetgreen 5 days a week so he can be healthy, and then he's eating at Shake Shack 2 nights a week, right? Because he wants a great tasting.
And he's using Order Up and eating at Kava as well, right?
Yeah, and Kava Grill. And so like, he's not subscribing to cable. So if he can't come to games and he can't watch my games on cable, how do I reach the next generation of fan? And so one of the things that I think you'll see innovation happening is this redefinition of a bundle. And bundles will be bundles of video content and real world stuff, but experiences. There's a very, very interesting company that launched in New York and is rolling out, and I don't know how it will end, but the concept of it was a MSO bundler around experiences, and it's called ClassPass, and it's $99 a month. And so a millennial won't spend $99 a month on video, but it seems in some of these key cities they'll pay $99 a month to go rock climbing and to spinning classes and to cooking classes. We didn't get that opportunity. And so conceptually, there's this redefinition that no one saw coming, where there's a rejection of video and an embracing of subscriptionizing experiences. And so I think subscriptionization, reoccurring of revenues enabled by technology, going to be real big important themes that drive through our business.
Well, so to take that a step further, so you're sold out, you see something like ClassPass selling experience, and then by the way, I'm a ClassPass customer with another company. But what is the solution then to sold out and connecting with people, even with the sports teams and the fans who should be there? Is there some sort of experiential model that you can take out of the arena?
Well, I think what we're going to try to do is, through our own network, and you'll hear this term over the top, bypassing, if you will, some of the cable, is trying to create value in other kinds of programming, high school, college, other sports. And then, I could see us marketing seats at a Caps versus Flyers game, and then the next day you get on the train with a bunch of millennials and it's like date night, Tinder night, and then you go up to Philadelphia and you go to a game, and on the weekend where we're not playing, Alex Ovechkin is a disc jockey at a rave party. And as bizarre as that sounds, that's what I mean about having to innovate with new kinds of offers. And I also think that this breaking down the barrier between the product, the celebrity, the individual, and the individual consumer is becoming really, really driven. And that is the power of this social media, that you can crash through the wall and get closer to the product or the person.
So in the contracts that you have with your players, do you include all these other incremental pieces that might happen?
No, the contracts are strictly, to play. It's
Right.
convened by unions and a CBA. And so when you go and do something, you have to be very cognizant about not violating salary cap issues
Right.
and matters. But the players, players are very, very committed to the community. We just had John Wall donated a bunch of money, $400,000 to kids, homeless charities, and our own foundation. These are young men and women that care, and they're growing up. They're very, very different. We just announced with the first teams in the NBA, the NHL, and the WNBA to use virtual reality training. And again, training and being able to take young people, and it's really going to change in the hospitality industry. When someone reads something, a week later they'll retain about 20% of that information. When they read and someone's teaching them, it goes up to about 30%. When they read and hear and then they can watch, it's about 40% retention. When they can read, hear, watch, and interact, it finally gets over 50% retention. But when you can experience something, that's why sports teams have practices and camp and the repetition, you get up into the 70-80% range. With virtual reality and what's happening with GoPro cameras and kind of the speed of the infrastructure, you can put the player right in the game. You can put the employee right in the area. I saw a demo the other day for medical school where you study biology and chemistry in college, and then you go to medical school and you intern and you work in the emergency room, but you want to be a specialist in livers. And now you're not allowed really, maybe once during school you'll go into the operating room. And it's not just the incision and the operation, it's the whole gestalt around it. It's showing up really early in the morning, washing your hands, being briefed, walking into the emergency room, seeing all of the people around the table, seeing where all of the equipment is. And you put on that Oculus Rift helmet, and you're there. I mean, you feel like you can reach out and touch it. And I think virtual reality is going to change behavior and really be one of the great tools to teach people. And they'll move up that productivity curve much, much faster because they're replicating a real world experience instead of it being about theory.
Is that, two thoughts on that. Is that also potentially the solution for getting fan engagement outside of the stadium to actually put virtual reality, the game in front of them, as if they are sitting there, and also for player training? Is there a piece of that?
Player training, we're doing that now. Football teams have started to do it. I can see a day, first time I put it on, I said, I would like to sell season tickets to our away games. Right now we sell season tickets to our building, and then our fans watch on television the game. They subscribe to Comcast. But if you're sitting in row A at Verizon Center, maybe one day we can sell you row A in Cleveland when we're playing the Cavaliers. And when you put this on, if you haven't experienced it, there's the cameraman walking, you look aside and you see people walking up the stairs, you look upstairs and you see, you literally are in a virtual 3D world. And this concept notion of gamification, where the video games industry and how pervasive it is for a young generation. 10 years ago, the video game industry surpassed all of Hollywood, which is amazing in terms of revenues. But it changes subtly even the way people look at games. So television has always had the passive camera at half court or center ice for hockey and basketball. Yet when you give young people the option of which camera angle, which view do they like most, instead of it being this way, they like it this way. Because when they play video games, they're on the field and they're shooting at the basket. And their optical view of things is this way, not that way. It's just unbelievable. The way Google, when you do a search, so we were early investors, the first or second investor in Google early on, and they were an arms dealer to us at AOL. And when I asked, why will you beat Yahoo? He said, well, our algorithms are smarter and better, and our results will come up faster. And I remember doing the test. I typed something in, and 1 million listings came up in 0.89 seconds. And Yahoo, 1 million listings came up in 1.1 seconds. I was like, really? That differential will make one company worth $300 billion and another company worth $10 billion? And then it dawned on me that, well, if search becomes the way people are navigating and their expectation is real time, and not only is it incredibly fast, it's free, right? So it's Moore's law, faster, better, cheaper, till it's free, and it's fastest. So fast, real time will become a big driver. Now, whenever you get a generation that pushes based on those technology trends, you'll have the other edge. Remember, the middle is a bad place to be. And so speed, technology, social media, Twitter, Vines. I don't want to watch a 2-hour movie. I want to watch a 6-second Vine. But an unintended consequence of that has been this real drive to authenticity. We just made an investment in, I think it's going to be one of the most important new companies. It's a parent company is called Bedrock Manufacturing, and one of their brands is Shinola. And Shinola is about glass and metal and mechanical parts and the bringing together that through high art manufacturing, and they're putting to work out of work auto workers in Detroit and making for high paying manufacturing jobs. And that narrative around authenticity and great products not only is resonating very, very well with consumers, it also has this basic value proposition of, why should I spend $8,000 for a watch or get it as a gift, and the jobs are overseas? I'd rather spend less, spend $500 or $1,000 for a great watch and free up those extra dollars so I can eat out more, I can travel to Costa Rica and chase monkeys, and you're seeing that kind of conscious, mindful decision-making being made by this generation, and it dramatically affects everything we're doing in hospitality and sports and the food industries.
I'm listening to each of the things that you're talking about. I'm just in my head, I'm just picturing this, putting it together, sort of lessons learned just in this conversation. So one thing that you said a few minutes ago was the concept of the visual aspect of how somebody takes a look at something and how they're looking down the ice and how they view it and changing the angle. Well, the same thing would be said if you're taking a look for the same generation to be coming into a food service operation or a truck or whatever it's going to be in the future, that perhaps designing how people expect to see. I'm not so sure that we normally think about that, of what the visual is that they're used to and what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think you see it, again, with like this company, Shinola. They're going to have 70 retail stores. They just opened on 14th Street. But every store is different, and every store marries, if you will, something about the local neighborhood. And so one of the reasons that Groupon was initially very successful, it was local and then hyper-local. And so as part of urbanization, it's not only Washington, D.C., it's your local community. And so how things are presented, Sweetgreen, we're trying to be a scale business. What is grown and served seasonally in Los Angeles, where we just opened, is very different than Philadelphia.
Are you actually involved in those conversations? I mean, it's one thing to invest, it's another thing to be mentoring or helping somebody. So whether it's Shinola or whether it's Sweetgreen, or, I mean, are you actually involved in the operational discussion of where they go?
Well, it depends on the company. I'm not on the board of Sweetgreen. I was an advocate of it, but Steve Case is on that board. I am on the board of Bedrock, and so yeah, we believe in entrepreneurs. We believe in people. We want to make sure that we can add value, and so I think this that the advantage that was brought on by scale economics. We're going to have the McDonald's in Alaska is going to be just like the McDonald's in Miami. That's not playing well with the communities, right? They want something that is localized and personalized and has real-time relevancy. And so that, again, just that architecture, that mental mapping of how you connect with consumers, and unless you're on a digital platform that allows you real-time, quickly, inexpensively to update what you're presenting and what the look and feel is, it's really, really hard.
But a lot of those companies like Sweetgreen's, I've met the three founders, I guess, are they under 30 right now? Yeah. So, they're going to be in touch with a certain community as they do these things. What is your advice for people that are a little bit more mature, 20 years young, right?
Well,
more mature, groups to be in touch and do that?
Sweetgreen is a beautifully romantic story. We're at a Marriott. Marriott is one of the great companies with this great founding family that really gets it. And I mean that. And one of their businesses was being able to feed you on a college campus. They do the cafeterias. And that led to the concept of the freshman 15. Right? Every father and mother who drops their kids off at school, that's like the big fear of students. You're going to put on food. Wait, because you go in this cafeteria environment, it's unlimited pizza and soft drinks and desserts. And so here were three kids who grew up in LA, one in New York, and it was, this isn't how we were raised. Why are we eating this stuff? And why isn't there healthier food? And they moved off a campus together, and the landlord owned one of these little restaurants on M Street.
M Street, right.
And they convinced the landlord that rather than hamburgers or pizza, that they could create a program, a platform that brought kids off of campus and would want to eat healthy food and have soup and fresh baked breads and And so they just had this deep-seated belief of disruption on why is it accepted that there's a freshman 15? I mean, where was it written that said you're supposed to go to college and spend $60,000 in tuition or get student loans or get government grants, and I'm going to get fat? And so, I mean, we admired their gumption, if you will. Shinola is called Shinola. The founder of the company was founder and CEO of Fossil. And Fossil, big company, went public, and he retired, and then he felt that people in Detroit, and if you haven't been to Detroit, great urban area, I remind people all the time that Detroit was 2 generations ago Silicon Valley. It's where all the investment was, it's where all the technology was being driven. And if you haven't been to Detroit, even today with the renaissance that it's underway, it's a city that still needs uplifting. And when the founder of the company told his lawyer, I'm thinking of building an entry to luxury, high quality manufacturing job, starting out with watches in Detroit, his advisor said, you don't know shit from Shinola about doing that. And he said, as an entrepreneur, good, you don't think it's a good idea? I'm going for it, I'm going to name my company Shinola. And so betting on jockeys and not the horse sometimes is the best way to build value.
So if somebody is obviously you're investing, but if you're speaking at a school and you're talking, and by the way, it could be a community, a high school, or a college, and you're talking to somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur, who wants to do something, is there a single piece of advice you give them?
So I wrote a book called Business of Happiness, and its basic tenet is if you're successful, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy. I was watching CNN the other day. There was some story about Michael Jackson's estate, and he's making as much money dead than he was alive, and he was the #1 most valuable recording artist, and he owned the Beatles catalog, and it was like he won, and he was so miserable that he died because he would take drugs that you get when you're being operated on. So we know that if you're successful, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy, but if you're happy, you can be open to success. And there's very few tenets, best case studies around what makes for happy people. Being an active participant in multiple communities of interest and volunteering and giving back, and having high levels of self-expression. It's why I make movies, it's why I wrote a book, it's why I blog every day. I already did 4 blog posts on Ted's Take this morning. We want to be heard. The only time I ever get into a fight with my wife, she says, you're not listening to me. And
does you post then on the blog?
and that you find the higher calling and in what you're pursuing. So I try to talk to kids about being open to happiness. If you go, while you're here, go to the Library of Congress. They have the founding documents of our democracy. They have the archives has the Constitution, and the Library of Congress has the Declaration of Independence. And you see the first pass of the Declaration of Independence and then every red line version afterwards. And the only sentence in the entire Declaration of Independence that wasn't edited was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It wasn't life, liberty, and the pursuit of property or stuff. It was happiness. And somehow we've gotten away from having some kind of focus on self-actualization and happiness. And then when I give people real advice, career advice, I say, I was an English and an American Studies major. I was with someone yesterday was talking to me about his daughter, and he said, and my daughter's studying political science. Oh, I'm sure that's going to land her a good career. And you got to study math. Algorithms are everywhere. Big data is everywhere. We have so much data. I'm shocked at how business people and marketing people, we have all this data. How did we miss that experiences are important more than stuff, that people want to care about what goes in their bodies more than what goes on their bodies. And so I think this next generation really needs to understand the importance of math. We still have graduated like 30,000 math PhDs a year in the United States, and in China there's like 1 million a year. I don't know the exact number, but it's orders of magnitude more. The gentleman who introduced me and his company, they're all about math. They have 220,000 people, a lot in India, a lot in China, and they're all math people. And so if you have young kids, I'd say don't eat M&Ms, but study math and Mandarin, and you'll be well positioned on the go forward.
Well, Ted, there's an awful lot more questions and conversation I'd like to have, but I would like to open it up to the audience if there's a question. I see a hand over here, and she's coming with a microphone there.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tim Tang with Hughes. Your point about the millennials being more interested in experience than ownership was telling, but then when the millennials go into these wonderful restaurants with these beautiful environments, they're just all staring at their phones. How do you get that focus on experience to get them to put these things down and enjoy the restaurant experience that's being created for them?
That's a really great point. My wife, I put my phone away when I go out with my family. I don't bring my iPhone. And it's amazing to see like a young couple on a date at a restaurant and they're both texting. It's like, are they texting each other?
But they're talking.
I don't get it. And but that is a challenge. I mean, we have people that pay $2,000 for a ticket for a Wizards game. And they're in the first row and they're texting. It's like the world's greatest athletes are like right in front of you. And they're taking photos and they're posting on Twitter and they're tweeting, and so it's the interactivity around that. So providing good wireless and having video and using music and always updating, I do think is a way around that. I also think how you use. Like at Verizon Center, we were one of the first, if not the first, big arena to install these beacons. And so we activate when someone comes in, if there's a sale or a new menu item, or hey, maybe there are 2 seats downstairs that were unsold and you're walking to your seats upstairs, and we can send you an alert that says, hey, for $10 more, why don't you come downstairs, just click and go to your seats. And so integrating mobile technology as opposed to I mean, I agree that it's like you would take your phones away from you. I have meetings all the time, and I've been a chief villain there because I'll be so busy and I'll come into a meeting and someone's presenting and I'm under the table doing it. But more and more, I'm basically asking people, put the weapons away, right? That we've asked someone to come and present to us. And I beg the person who's presenting, make it fast and impactful, because it's this battle. I've said, I become attention deficit disorder. I can't go to bed at night without having some white space on my screen on my emails, right? And with that first generation, where we just communicate so much electronically. And so, yeah, pushing away from that is pretty important.
But as you know, in the early days, there used to be that concept of fighting for eyeball time. And now you're just fighting for attention at all. Yep. My solution to not pulling out the phone, which I'm totally guilty of, is put it on my wrist and just, I can see those emails if I need to see it. But come down the road, I think either through glasses or other wearable or chips or something embedded, I don't know what it's going to be. We'll probably just get that message.
I mean, we're talking about sports a little bit. So probably the biggest phenomenon that you'll read about over the next couple of years is the birth of competitive e-gaming leagues. Now, I want you to think about this. 20,000 people going to an arena, watching 8 kids killing aliens on the big screen. Right? And you go, well, that's never going to happen. Oh, yes, it is. And you'll probably see leagues and global leagues emerge, and media companies emerge around it, and event companies emerging around it. There was just an announcement the other day that Turner is going to broadcast some e-gaming tournaments. And when you just think about that, you'd say, well, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you'd say, come on, who's going to do that? But that is a phenomenon. It's a skill. People are putting on their resumes, what their World of Warcraft rankings are and the like. And so, yeah, the world's changed, and it'll just continue as you have to remember, when I got online at 1200 baud, and there were less than 500,000 people who were online. And so we wanted to get America online, and today there's about 300 million internet connections in the United States, right? So I've got one at home, I've got one in 3 different offices, but there's about 300,000 internet connections, 300 million internet connections. But there's 4 billion internet connections around the world. The United States now is less than 10% of the internet connectivity. I remember on Wax Pool Road in Northern Virginia, where MCI, WorldCom, and AOL were headquartered, more than half the world's internet traffic in 1998 was passing through Wax Pool Road in Sterling, Virginia. Now we're a very, very small part of that. And there's 7 billion people around the world. The 3 billion that don't have some kind of internet connectivity, it's a setback that's as bad as not having reliable power and electrical grid, not having clean water. I mean, it's that fundamental of haves and have-nots. And there is a lot of work being done to try and make ubiquity of access, and those phones that get in our way, why they've been so enabling and empowering is, well, most people can't afford a $3,000 desktop or a $1,500 laptop. But you get your phone as part of a subscription. It's a service, right? Again, furthering this whole notion of the subscriptionization and on-demand of everything. And you'll see more and more where you'll just subscribe for your connectivity, and you'll be given devices, and as a new device comes in, you throw out the old device, and maybe that old device will get repurposed and sent to a developing nation, and that's a way that we'll be able to give back.
Another question? Over there.
Sure. Mike.
Go ahead and stand up and.
Oh, sure.
Just
If you look at the food service or restaurant industry, do you see any particular sectors that you think would be a high growth opportunity, a big investment opportunity from your perspective as an investor?
Yeah, I think that, we just invested in a great fast-growing local company here called Cava Grill. And Kava is taking Mediterranean flavors and cooking and putting it in a high-value, convenience, Chipotle kind of sense, and is doing something really interesting in that they're both urban and suburban, and they've hit it. There's some magic around that. I do think national rollouts of verticals where, if you look at what Starbucks did against local coffee shops, taking coffee and moving that everywhere, I think you'll see big Latino. I think you'll see a redefinition of Chinese. I think obviously there's such a big and growing Indian, Pakistani population. You'll start to see huge verticals becoming very, very populist. We have a great chef in town, Jose Andres, who's got a really interesting company called Think Food Group. They're like an R&D shop around things. And he's just launched something called beefsteak. And it's celebrating vegetables, beefsteak tomatoes. And it's doing really, really well. And his theory of the case is that people are going to reject more and more red meat. And that vegetables that can be cooked and flavored appropriately, that would have high global appeal, but also really connect well with millennials. So those are a couple that we find of interest.
Well, listen, Ted, this has been terrific, and I'm so glad that you accepted the offer to come join us here, and everybody, please,
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much.